All right, it looks like we got Algebra 2, Lecture 913, 914, OSA 2A22. The student will square binomials, that's something plus something else, two terms, or something minus something else. We'll square binomials, that means we're going to take something and multiply it by itself, and it's going to be a binomial that we're multiplying by itself. And we're going to be careful not to make the most common error in doing so. Okay, I promise you'll see this on the ACT, and the most common error will be one of the choices that they'll offer you. So I want to show you the most common error. Squaring binomials, the most common error. Well, squaring a binomial means you have usually a variable plus or minus some constant, some number. A constant is a number, a variable is a letter, generally speaking. And we're squaring it. The most common mistake kids make when they square binomials, they'll say, okay, we'll square this one, and we'll square this one. 7 times 7 is 49. And they'll look among their multiple choice answers, and that will be there, but it's wrong. Don't do that. We can't do that. That's the most common error. We don't want to do that. Why is it the most common error? Because this means, this being squared means we're going to multiply this whole thing by itself. We're going to take this entire binomial and multiply it by itself. That's what we're supposed to do. Don't just square each one of those. As long as you have a plus sign or a minus sign between them, you cannot just square each one of these terms. You'll get it wrong, and that will be one of your choices on a multiple choice test. So let's see the proper method for squaring a binomial. Well, what we do, I just talked about it. We take the binomial, then we multiply it by itself. And we learned how to do this back in Algebra 1. You can use the FOIL method, or some people call it the double distributive method, and some people like to use the Punnett square. It doesn't matter, as long as we take the time to do all of the multiplication and combine like terms. I'm personally going to use FOIL, which some people call double distributive. I'm going to take this term and multiply it by both of these terms. I'm going to distribute it. And x times x is x squared. X times x is x squared, and x times positive 7 is positive 7x. Now I'm going to take this term and do the same thing. We'll take that 7 and I'm going to distribute it. 7 times x, positive 7 times positive x is positive 7x. And 7 times 7 is 49. And once we've done that distribution, once we've FOILed it, so to speak, we then go to combine any like terms, if there are any. And there are in this case. Remember, in order to be like terms, you have to have the exact same variable and the exact same exponent. In this case, they have an exponent of an implied or an invisible or an understood 1. So they have the same exponent and the same variable. We can combine these using addition or subtraction. This is not a like term because it doesn't have the same exponent. Okay? We get rid of those. And we'll say this will combine into x squared plus 7x plus 7x is 14x plus 49. These terms won't combine because they're not like terms, so we just stop. And this is the correct method for squaring a binomial. If you have a binomial that's being squared, binomial square, then we're going to multiply it by itself using FOIL or Punnett square, or however you want to do it. You're going to wind up usually with 3 terms, and it'll look something like that. Let's do a couple. So remember, don't just square each one of these. This is wrong. It looks right, it feels right, but it's wrong because it doesn't take this and multiply it by itself. So don't do that. Here we go. We're going to find each product. That means multiply these by themselves. It says square it. So don't just call this 25n squared minus 64. That's wrong. Do this. 5n minus 8 times the quantity, 5n minus 8. And then we do our FOILing. Take this one and multiply it by these two. That will give me 25n to the second power. 25n squared. minus 40n, 5n times negative 8. Remember that negative goes with that 8 there. Negative 8 times 5n is negative 40n. Okay, so that's this multiplied by these two. Now I'm going to multiply this by these two. I'm foiling. Remember, this minus sign travels with it, so to speak, when you distribute it. So it'll be negative 8 times 5n is minus another 40n, negative 40n. And then negative 8 times negative 8, negative times negative is positive, 64. And we combine our like terms. Our like terms are right here, same variable, same exponent, invisible 1. So we wind up with 25n to the second power. Negative 40n minus 40n, they're the same sign, so I'm going to add them together and keep the sign. And then I'm going to tag that positive 64 on the end because it won't combine. And there is our binomial that's been squared. Squares into a quadratic trinomial, 3 terms. Okay, let's take a look at that. Let me move this out of the way so I have a little bit more room over here. We're going to do the same thing. Got the square of a binomial, so I'm going to say, well, that's the binomial 6x plus 3 times itself. And I'm going to FOIL it, or use double distributed, however you want to think of it. This term times both of these. That will yield 6x times 6x is 36x to the second power. 6x times positive 3 is positive 18x. Then I take this second term, positive 3, and I distribute it. This gives me positive 18x, 3 times 6x, plus, because it's positive times positive, 3 times 3 is 9. Then once again, we combine our like terms. Those are the only terms that have the same variable and the same exponent. So we add or subtract them depending on their signs. In this case, they're both the same sign. We're going to add and keep the sign. And they'll be positive, what is that, 36x. 18x plus 18x is 36x plus 9. And there we go. I'm going to check my answer sheet and see if I'm getting these right. Somewhere around here I have a key. Looking for 913, 914. Let's see. D is 25. This one. 25n squared minus 80n plus 64. Yay. 36x squared plus 36x plus 9. Yay. 2 in a row. Go me. So there we are. We're squaring a binomial using FOIL. Or you could use Punnett square. You'd get the same thing. I just FOIL or double distribute because that's how I was taught to do it when I was little. Here we go. I'm going to FOIL this. I recognize that I don't want to just square both of these. You can't do that. I'm going to have to multiply this by itself. 8n minus 4 times the quantity. 8n minus 4. Don't call this 64n squared plus 16. Can't do that. Because this means this times itself. That's what that second power means. And in order to do this, we have to FOIL. Here we go. Distributing this term right here to both of these terms. Trying not to make any mistakes. 8n times 8n is 64 into the second power. 8n times negative 4 is negative 32n. I'm done with that. Now I'm going to distribute this negative 4. So the negative 4, the minus sign travels with the 4, so to speak. And here we go. That's negative 32n. And this is negative 4 times negative 4. Negative times negative is positive 16. We combine our like terms. And that yields 64n to the second power. Minus, they're the same sign, so I'm going to add them together. 64n, 32n plus 32n is 64n. but I gotta keep the sign. They're both negative, so I keep the sign. When we add or subtract, if they're the same sign, we add and keep the sign. If they're different signs, we subtract, keep the sign of the one with the greater absolute value. And we tag that 16 on the end. These are not like terms, so I can't combine any further. And there we go. And let's see if I got that one right. 64n squared minus 64n plus 16, yay! One more. You get these out of the way. And again, we're going to, notice the x comes second here, that doesn't matter. You could have 4x here or 4x here, doesn't matter. We're going to multiply it by itself. Because that's what that means. This means we're going to multiply this by itself. Here we go. Try not to make any mistakes. Going to distribute this one. FO first in each set of parentheses, outside. And that will give me 16 plus 16x. Done with those two. Now I'll take this one and distribute it. It's positive, and both of these are positive, so everything's going to be positive in this one. 4x times 4 is plus another 16x. And 4x times 4x is positive 64x squared. Okay. When we go to combine our like terms, we're looking at these two. Those are the only like terms. So we'll wind up with 16 plus 16x plus 16x is 32x. They're the same sign, so I added them together and kept the sign. And plus 64x squared. If you got this as your answer, and you saw among your multiple choice answers that they had changed the order, they called it this, 64x squared plus 32x plus 16. This and this are two different ways of saying the same thing as long as all the terms have the same sign. In each case, these are all positive, so these would all have to be positive. This is the correct answer. It could be written like this. Usually you'll see it written like this, but not always. This is called standard form, where you have the highest power of the exponent first, and then the powers descend. That's x to the 0 power. And there's an invisible or an implied x to the 0 power right there. X to the second, x to the first, x to the 0. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're squaring binomials by multiplying the binomial by itself using FOIL or double distributive, however you want to think of it. And we're avoiding the most common mistake. The most common mistake is to just square both of them, and I guarantee you, in a multiple choice setting, you'll see this as one of the wrong answers. And a lot of kids will see that and say, oh, that's it, move on. Don't do that. Binomial square means you got to multiply the binomial by itself using FOIL. Okay? You can do this.